Readers of GBGunsDepot.com and even a few videos have shown you guys that last year I was introduced to this guy, the BUL Armory SAS2 TAC 4 1/4, and absolutely loved it. I took it to training courses, I carried it through the winter, I carry the 3 1/4 inch ultralight version now in the summertime, but I found this pistol to be an excellent balance of performance and portability thanks to the aluminum frame and a few other features on this thing. It is a performance gun that I can carry and shoot well with, and I absolutely love it. In this box is the new 2024 version. We gave you a bit of a preview of it when we visited BUL Armory's booth at the IWA Outdoor Classics show in Germany earlier this year. Now we've got one in hand, tabletop review and field strip coming up next on GBGuns. Right off the bat, we have a charcoal box, I'm going to call it, a grayish black instead of the old tan ones, and when we open up we get one of those beautiful BUL Armory range bags. These are great bags, but they are now black instead of the older gray ones. I'm going to get the box out of the way so we can show you what all is in here. These bags are very smartly designed and made. They have a bit of a wall to them so they can actually stand on their own. Nothing on the back. Front side you've got a Velcro strip for your GBGuns patch and a pocket in here, which I've used for sticking documentation or things that I might need or want to have externally available. Opening it up, and you do have locking eyelets on this bag. No, it would not get you through TSA, but yes, you could secure it if that's what you wanted to do. Up top, we've got room for 6 magazines, that flap separator, and now we're getting to the goodies. This is going to go a bit deep because you get a lot with BUL Armory. In this first pouch, we have some decals, a tiny Allen key, let's set that aside, a cover plate with screws because it comes without that plate mounted, and our owner's manual. We'll get to that in a bit. We also have nylon cleaning brush, brass cleaning brush, and an actual metal cleaning rod. And then another pouch in which we've got 3 optics plates and a pin. These 3 optics plates are for the new B.A.O system, the BUL Armory optics system, which I think is brilliant. I'll explain a little bit more on that later. These plates are included with the gun. They are nice and thin because they can be, thanks to the design of it. I'm really looking forward to slapping probably this guy, the RFX 35, on the gun after the initial review is done. This pin is because some folks complained about the magazine well that comes on the gun being a little bit big. Yes, it does add some concealment concerns. Fortunately, there's nothing in the back, which is where most of your concealment issues would come from. It's the sides and bottom. But if you don't like that, on the new ones you can remove that and use that other pin to hold in your mainspring housing. I'll clear this stuff and we'll continue on. Now going deeper in the bag, we have our pistol in bubble wrap in a plastic bag and well oiled. Gotta warn you guys, there is a scent when you open these things. It smells like a machine shop, and I'm okay with that. Then we see the Velcro bottom to this bag as well as these straps. These can be used to retain the pistol, shape or format any way you want. And 2 additional mags for a total of 3 magazines. Now these magazines are not 2011 magazines, and that is actually a good thing because BUL Armory's magazines are of higher capacity. We have plastic base pad, which is something that recently T and I were reflecting on after I had that hang fire. Should you have an out of battery detonation or some type of terrible thing go wrong in a gun, having a plastic base pad is probably a good thing because that lets, when that pressure comes down into the magazine, lets that blow off and all the stuff go confettiing out the bottom rather than swelling the magazine, swelling the gun, and hurting you. Our witness windows are on the back in your standard empty, low, medium, and full, which is quite common with foreign-made guns. And then we have a nice BUL Armory chamber flag. This is a quality, actually usable one, something that you can hold on for a while. So if you're at a range that requires that, there's your thing. You also have an eyelet for adding a tag. I know some places require something like that, so that's a nice added feature. Also, of course, the federally mandated lock, but this one labeled BUL Armory, just keeping things classy. You guys know I always go through the manuals. That's in part because I see them as indicative as how much the company wants you to understand and know the product. I also do it for YouTube because I field strip things, and YouTube says that I am disassembling and building firearms, and I like to show them that right here in the manual I am doing something that is end user level, as demonstrated by these diagrams. YouTube reviewer, you can pause and read that stuff to see that what I will be doing is end user as per the manual. For regular viewers, no particular special notes from the manual, nothing super tricky, but it does mention that tiny Allen key that we'll want to hold because this has a full-length guide rod. You can also use a paperclip. I have a paperclip that has served me many years, but it's nice that BUL Armory includes the tool for taking care of that. More on that when we get to field strip. I did not see any ammunition restrictions or recommendations in here. However, with a 4 1/4 inch barrel, there's no need for plus P ammunition. So I'm assuming, and from my own experience running plus P in my other BUL Armories, that it'll be fine. Just be aware that you may be accelerating the wear and tear on the firearm. Now let's get to the gun. And here we are, still with plenty of machine oil on it and a safety tag warning you to not mishandle the firearm and to read the instructions. I'll clip that off real quick. There we are, that's better. I also wiped off some of that excess oil. Israel has a humid climate in some areas, and these things take some time to get to the US, so having extra oil for shipping is a smart investment that I applaud. So you might be asking right off the bat, what is the difference between this year's SAS2 EDC and the previous year's SAS2 TAC 4 1/4? Have you spotted some differences yet? First off, the most visually obvious of them is we've got to change to the serrations from the classic kind of cut line to this more scallop. It also covers more surface area. What I like about these scallops, and I am familiar with them already because they were on the Axe C Tomahawk that we've previously reviewed, is they are grabby. They let flesh fill these gaps without having any sharp or hard points on them. And that is smooth the gun. Whereas with the classic straight lines, you kind of have some hard spots on it. And if you run a course where you're doing a lot of stuff, you might end up with some raw fingers, whereas this is less likely to do that. You also may have noticed that these silver accents are gone. That was from end user feedback. People requested and preferred the blacked out. I liked the silver, but I'm just me. So black is the new setup. You might also notice that we have a flush barrel versus a barrel that slightly protrudes, and up front, the front sight post, we've got the green fiber optic. Originally, this one came with a blacked out front, and I changed it to the green fiber optic because for a carry gun, I use irons, and I did not like the black on black for carry. Replacing this front sight post was super easy, and it was a $40 sight post from BUL Armory. Didn't cost me much in time or money to make that change. Those of you getting a 2024 model will have that coming from the factory. The muzzle has a 10-degree target crown that is really handsome. I think that's pretty good looking, though I never complain about more barrel. Looking at the two of these, I think this guy is a prettier one, but that could be just because it's new to me. The other big change is the introduction of BUL Armory's B.A.O. optics mounting system, which is brilliant. You notice we've got two sets of holes there. You also notice we've got this swell, a little bit of extra steel left on the slide there to accommodate the broader mounting holes of some of the optic footprint setups. That is part of one of the reasons for the cost increase, aside from additional machining required. But to have that wider section there, you've got to start with a bigger chunk of steel, which means more has to be cut off, and your source material or your raw material cost goes up because you're beginning with more steel. There's a lot of steel shaved off to make this slide, and I appreciate the time and effort they're putting into that. As far as this B.A.O. optic system, part of why I love it is that post right there. You can see that rises in the middle, and when we put a plate on top, that centers the plate. It also takes all of the load and stress off of your mounting screws. See, the problem with, well, all optics mounting on handguns is that screws are not designed for shear strength. They are not designed to have a lateral strength against them. They are a clamping force design. And so when you screw something down from the top and the slide is going back and forth, the weight of the optic is putting force on those screws and you end up with broken screws. With this plate setup, that lug is taking that lateral force and keeping it on the plate. It's absorbing everything right there. So your screws get to do what screws are designed for, and that is clamp, not have to fight shear at the same time. Very smart, and you notice how these fit. Very nice thin plates. This guy, the broad one, has a little bit of a ramped angle to it to wrap down and contour to the gun, as well as protect underneath, keep debris and things from getting there. So I think that's pretty cool. I am going to put the blank cover on this thing because I, at least originally, am going to run it without optics. And now we've got the blank plate there. I know some of you are saying, oh, Graham's such a FUD not wanting to carry an optic. That's personal choice. It's based on my training and experiences. I've only spent 50 plus days in national level professional training, and I've only reviewed about 400 guns and about 24 dots. So your experiences may be different from mine. I respect that. I will run a dot on this thing after the fact, just because these guns are so much fun. But now you can see what the cover plate looks like on this thing, and I think we can get the old one out of the way. One other note is you might have noticed that the branding is much subtler. It's overall just a subtler, more serious looking gun. Not that this didn't look serious, but this has a little bit of flair that I think probably relates to BUL Armory's pedigree in competition. You can see even the EDC mark is just etched in there. It's not lasered on after the fact. That also requires a little bit more work than just lasering. Man, even the screws black instead of the silver accent there. So a much more gray man, I guess, if you will, looking gun, because the only people who really need to know are people who probably already know. I'm going to get the older model out of the way and we can start to do a deeper dive on the new EDC. Starting off, as always, looking for magazine ejection or release with the slide lock to the rear, flipping it upside down. Looks like what we're getting is release, but since they are metal bodied mags in a polymer grip, they drop quite freely. If I failed to mention it earlier, they are not the same pattern as the standard 2011 because they are a slightly higher capacity. You usually get 1 or 2 more rounds out of a BUL Armory magazine than you do out of your quote-unquote 2011 magazine. Alright, coming up front, that beautiful crown, 10-degree target crown. You can see obviously that we have a bull barrel and a full-length guide rod. Bull barrels are a little bit more complicated to machine and have run well, but they add non-reciprocating mass, as does the full-length guide rod. People like to argue on guide rod preferences back and forth. Full-length guide rods do mean that it's a little more work to take the pistol apart, but you get the extra weight out front. Speaking of weight out front, the frame on this, because it is the EDC model, is aluminum, which helps shed a little bit of weight. I'm curious to see with the slide differences if there's any massive difference between this and the one that I carried last winter. So without the magazine, completely empty, the old TAC 4 1/4, 1 pound, 10.5 ounces. Do we have a big difference here? 1 pound, 10.8 ounces, 3/10 of an ounce heavier. That's not a huge difference. It is, however, surprising. I would think that this slide might be a little bit lighter, or that having that flush crown barrel would be a little bit less material. So, not enough to really notice, which is a good thing, since this was plenty comfortable to carry in the wintertime. Although we have some weight savings from that aluminum and the shape, you still get 4 full spots of pick rail up front for attaching accessories of your choice. A little bit of texture on the trigger guard for those who like to grip up front. And you can see we have this nice double undercut. That's part of what I have enjoyed about the gun. My knuckle clears very well, and this little bit of undercut lets it get a little bit higher. I tuck my thumb into the spot of rail here. It's not something for everyone, depending on how well the rest of your recoil management is, but that really helps me hold on up top. texturing on the front of the front strap, and you can see the magazine well is the same as before. It also is fully functional, and there's a little bit of flaring, if the light can catch it, inside the polymer itself. So should you want to ditch this, and remember that other pin is included, so you can take this off, you still have some flaring. And then there's also the simple fact that a double stack single feed magazine is an inverse magwell in itself. Just train, you'll be okay. Texturing is the same as last year. This texture I found to be very comfortable. Does not shred you up or your clothes for carry, but if we can zoom in here, you'll see it's kind of like rough blacktop. If you ever seen a whole bunch of spillage of blacktop, little splatters, those bumps, that's kind of what it's like. It's not rubbery at all, like a blacktop would be, but it's bumps that definitely hold. You can also see that our magazine release button is threaded here if you want to put an extended magazine release on there. However, for an EDC model, I would not recommend it. Going on the back, we have a flat mainspring housing, plenty of checkering, and the nice enlarged beaver tail grip safety that is coming plenty high to prevent any hammer bite. And this spring is fairly light. It's pretty easy to deactivate this safety. In my runs at training courses and going for speed and all that, I did not ever fail to deactivate the safety, so that's a good thing. Our regular manual safety has a good positive on and off, nice and solid. Coming over to the other side, same as well. There's our sight picture. Love that green fiber optic with a little bit of light on either side to make it easy to center, and of course your optics ready for those who want to. Slide to frame fit, a little bit of wiggle, that's about it. I'd say enough wiggle to help maintain durability and the ability to run dirty, but it's still, you guys can hear how silky smooth that is. A very smooth action. Coming around the right side of the gun, everything as expected. Slight window there might serve as a leaded chamber indicator if I can zoom in the camera. There you go. But otherwise, everything nice and clean. These cuts on the slide here reduce weight, which helps compensate for the weight you add when you throw an optic on there. They're also there for the Pro models. Now this model is this is a 4 1/4 standard model. They're available 4 1/4 and 5-inch standard like this, or Pro, which have V8 porting, which is 4 ports on either side there. As a defensive shooter, the ports are cool for range time. I don't think I want to have ports going on if I had to shoot from close contact, indoors, in a car, things like that. So that's why I went with the non-ported version. Next, we'll field strip the EDC and take a look inside the gun. Now, if you're unfamiliar with full-length guide rod 1911s, you're going to need a tool. Either this nice little one that came with the gun, or you can custom make one like this. I've considered selling these on the internet. What do you guys think? $20? No, it's a paper clip, and once you jam it in there and close the slide, it custom forms it to the gun you're using it on. I've used the same clip on a lot of guns a lot of times. And for the implementation of that, we're going to lock the slide to the rear, and it might be a little tough to get on camera because of the angle, but you will see a little hole right in there, and that's where this guy's got to get tucked in. It can take a little bit of fishing at times to find the right angle to get it to engage. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it easily this time on camera. Let me fuss with it off camera and I'll pass along any notes. And it was paperclip to the rescue because it has a shorter leg on it. It's able to fit. So once we have that in place, we're going to ease the slide forward on it, and that's going to keep your recoil assembly compressed. Now the rest of the gun is easy to slide back and forth. We can take this back to where the slide stop release lever lines up with that window, press from the other side. I don't know if I got enough press on there to be able to pull it out. No, I'll need to push a little bit farther. Something to tap. There we go. And now we can bring our slide forward off of the gun. This gives us a look at the frame setup. See See a little bit of powder there from the test firing, the filler rather. And some decent oil already on the gun. Yes, I do run guns out of the box as they come as a worst case scenario. Higher end guns like these, sometimes I give a little extra attention to, just because it's likely not something that is your only gun, not something you're buying and then maybe way home from the gun store before you have time for anything else you need to use it. No, these are finer tools. Now we can bring our recoil assembly out through the back, and that's going to require that paper clip to come with us, so you just want to be conscious not to scratch things up. See, nice setup there. And now knocking that barrel bushing down, unlock the barrel again, and we can bring the barrel out the front. Give us a look inside our slide. You can see this is a 70 series, meaning that it does not have the extra safety inside of it. You guys can debate whether or not you think a 70 series is safe for carry or not. I've seen arguments all over the place, and I think it largely depends on the hammer and the trigger of the gun in the first place. But the manual does specifically recommend not climbing walls or trees while carrying a gun. So there you have it. Our barrel is also a bit dirty from the test firing. I'm going to clean that off real quick. That's a bit prettier, and now we can do our chamber fitment test. I'm going to do that using some Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense. It is nickel plated, that is corrosion resistance and friction reduction. But what we're looking for in chamber fitment is when I drop in this round, do we get a nice plunk like that? Can we turn the round freely? And yes, we can. And then you want to see how much of the case beyond the shoulder there, camera, focus, be a good camera. There we go. How much of the case is unsupported? And the answer is pretty much none of it. It is a fully supported chamber, at least as much as a 1911 action can be. That is useful in defense of yourself should you have a case want to rupture. Now I will reassemble this by simply inverting the way I disassembled it. And as I do that, I'll describe what you'll see in the shooting impressions video. I've already prearranged to make sure Miss Tia can make it out for this one. So from two shooters, you will see absolute cold shots, first shots through the gun. We don't do any warm-up or preps or practice or any of that stuff. We turn the camera on and start shooting because those first impressions are valuable to you. Then we will do full magazine plus one, show how these BUL Armory magazines run when fully stuffed, before heading over to the what's for dinner table to see if the gun will eat. That's 10 additional loads, additional to the range load that we'll be shooting, looking to see how different loads function, if there's any noticeable point of impact shift, but more importantly, does the gun feed and run it? Because of course any point of impact shift on a preferred load is something you can adjust for. From there, take it over to the spinner for sights and trigger control. Which reminds me, I need to show you guys the trigger on this thing. And after sights and trigger control, we do our practical accuracy, which will be 5 shots from 7 yards. Grouping, that's also when we collect our final thoughts on this thing. Get the paperclip back out. And then it give you our concluding thoughts. The full specs, pricing information, where to find one of these, all of that kind of stuff for this gun, as with many others that are reviewed on the channel, are in the pinned comment over at GBGunsDepot.com. We can publish things without the risk of an editor getting in the way of it coming out and without YouTube suppressing it. That's why, with support from our patrons and those of you who buy through links on that site, we pay to host a free to you, but also freedom-based source of firearms information. Now for the trigger talk. This thing is nice. We have light take up there to a wall. Very clean break with just enough over travel to not throw your shot off. There's our reset and break. Excellent, excellent trigger. Feels a lot like the one that I have been carrying. It's nice that BUL Armory has gone to this EDC line. If you're curious as to the how and why it came this way, that's because the TAC 4 1/4 that I carried before It's kind of basically this. It was an EDC gun. Some people were looking for a steel frame for a little more weight, a little more competition oriented or duty oriented type thing, and rather than go back and forth, BUL split the old TAC 4 1/4 into two models now. The EDC, which is what you saw here, and the TAC, which will be in another video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the range.